This is Meet Sean, where we break down real life topics insurance, annuities, real estate, travel planning, and home ownership so you can make smarter moves. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into one of the most interesting and maybe one of the most confusing financial products in retirement planning,
Yeah.
the fixed indexed annuity, or FIA.
It's fascinating because it really tries to solve that great retirement paradox, the one almost every investor faces.
Which is,
How do you get that potential for stock market growth without subjecting your hard-earned principal to the inevitable, sometimes violent stock market downturns?
that is the core conflict. Our sources all seem to confirm that the mission of the FIA is, on the surface, pretty simple.
Right. It's an insurance contract.
Designed to link your savings growth to a major index, usually the S&P 500, while guaranteeing, and this is the key part, that your principal never loses value.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to cut through the marketing language and figure out the mechanics of how that balance, protection and the chance for growth is actually achieved.
And what the hidden costs of that protection are for you, the listener.
Exactly.
The foundational definition is pretty straightforward. An FIA is a contract with an insurer. You put in a lump sum, and its growth is tied to the market, but, and this is key, with safeguards. It kind of sits right in the middle of the annuity family.
Okay, so let's place it in context really quickly. Our listener is pretty well informed. They know annuities are tools for, say, retirement savings diversification. But the FIA, it's a calculated compromise between its two cousins, right?
Think of it in terms of a risk profile. On one end, you have the most conservative option, the fixed annuity.
Super safe.
Totally safe. It offers total downside protection, zero risk to your principal. But in exchange, it offers a set, often pretty low interest rate. It's really just a security-first savings account.
Then on the other extreme, you've got the high-risk, high-reward option, the variable annuity.
And that lets you invest directly in these mutual fund-like sub-accounts. So you get 100% of the upside potential,
But you also take on all the risk.
100% of the market risk. In a crash, your principal is completely exposed to full losses.
And the FIA, the fixed index annuity, just slides right in between, promising the benefits of both. But, that phrase, best of both worlds, always raises a bit of a red flag for me.
As it should.
Doesn't the very mechanism that protects you from the downside also have to fundamentally limit your upside potential?
Oh, it absolutely does. And that limitation is the trade-off we're here to explore. The indexed annuity is engineered for, let's say, medium to high return potential linked to the market. But unlike that variable option, it maintains a guaranteed downside protection.
So it's for a specific kind of person.
Exactly. It's a tool for someone who needs growth, but views security as, well, as non-negotiable.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How does the insurance company do this? How do they manage to give you the protection of a fixed product, but link your gains to the performance of the S&P 500?
It sounds like financial magic.
It really does. But if we break it down, it's just structured hedging.
That's right. It all comes down to three main levers the insurer uses to control their risk and, by extension, your potential reward. The first lever dictates how much of the index's gain you're actually allowed to capture. It's called the participation rate.
So the participation rate isn't one-to-one. If the S&P 500 goes up 10%, I don't get a 10% interest credit.
Correct. The participation rate determines your share of the index's growth. Let's use the example from our source material. If the S&P 500 rises by 10% and your annuity has an 80% participation rate, you, the annuity holder, only capture an 8% gain.
And the key insight here is what happens to that other 20%.
Exactly.
I always hear that the insured, keeps the difference to fund the protection, but what does that actually mean in terms of financial engineering?
It means they're using that portion of the potential return they keep to purchase sophisticated derivative options.
Like call options.
Precisely. Like call options on the index. These are relatively inexpensive compared to the total principal. They buy just enough to cover the capped growth they promise you. The money they save by only giving you 80% of the market gain, or by setting a cap. That's the premium they use to buy the financial insurance, the 0% floor. That protects your principal.
That makes so much more sense. They use the money they shave off the top end to buy you insurance on the bottom end. And that brings us to the second lever, which is the absolute ceiling on your potential earnings, the cap concept.
The cap is the ultimate glass ceiling on your investment. It's the highest interest rate you can possibly earn, period. So if the insurer sets a cap of, say, 8%, and the S&P 500 shoots up 12% in a great year, you still only get 8%.
Which is a huge risk management tool for the insurer. It makes sure that even in a monster bull market, their liability is finite. Okay, so if I have an 80% participation rate and an 8% cap, and the market goes up 12%, I get 8%. But if the market goes up 9%, I get 7.2%. The cap and the participation rate work together to limit that upside.
They do.
Now, for the most important part, the safety net, the floor concept.
The floor is that non-negotiable minimum interest rate. It's almost always 0%. And this is the actual downside protection you are paying for with those limits.
So if the market crashes,
If the index drops by 5%, 10%, even 30%, think back to 2008 or the start of the pandemic, you still earn 0%.
you don't make anything.
You forfeit all potential gains, but you lose absolutely none of your principal investment.
And that's the real psychological benefit, isn't it? Knowing that when the market tanks, you won't wake up poorer, even if you did miss some gains on the way out.
Absolutely. It removes the stress of market timing, that severe volatility. It's a product designed for sleep-at-night security, first and foremost.
Okay, the mechanics are complex, but the benefits seem clear. Let's talk about the payoff.
Yeah.
What security does this actually buy the investor? Beyond principal protection, one of the biggest benefits FIAs are known for is providing a predictable retirement paycheck.
That's the guaranteed income stream aspect. And it addresses one of the biggest fears in retirement, which is longevity risk.
Outliving your money.
Outliving your money. Because the principal is protected, the insurer can structure payments that continue throughout your lifetime, no matter what the market does or how long you live.
And this certainty is often sealed with an optional add-on, the income rider.
Yes, the income rider is an extra feature, and it's often expensive, but it guarantees a specific, steady stream of income. It essentially turns the annuity into your own personal pension. It makes retirement planning dramatically more predictable.
And for a lot of listeners, that predictability is probably worth the price tag.
It can be.
Beyond the security of income, there's a really powerful financial benefit related to growth, the tax advantage.
Yes, the major advantage here is tax-deferred growth. Since the annuity is technically an insurance product, the earnings are not taxed while they accrue.
So the money can compound faster.
It allows the full balance to compound much faster over many years because you're not paying taxes every single year on interest or capital gains.
That compounding effect over a typical 10 or 20-year accumulation period, that can make a massive difference to the final retirement balance. But that tax bill eventually comes due, right? This isn't a Roth IRA.
That's the crucial caveat. When you do eventually withdraw the money in retirement, the growth portion, so everything above your original investment, is taxed as regular income.
Which is a higher rate than capital gains.
Much higher, potentially. So smart planning around the timing and the amount of your withdrawals is really essential to manage your tax bracket in retirement.
Okay, that brings us to the crucial pivot point. We've defined the mechanics, we've outlined the benefits, but nothing this secure comes without a cost. We have to transition to some critical thinking. Who is this product actually for, and what are the specific financial pitfalls lurking in the fine print?
The ideal candidate is, well, typically someone approaching or maybe already in retirement, someone who has sufficient liquidity elsewhere and wants that guaranteed income and growth potential. But, and this is key, they view preserving their capital as their highest priority. They want a predictable outcome, not the maximum possible return.
Right. And conversely, if you are an individual who might need flexibility or quick access to your money, you should probably run the other way.
You should.
And that's because of the heavy toll of surrender charges.
Surrender charges are, I would argue, the biggest structural drawback. These are steep fees you'll incur if you pull out money early, usually within the first 5 to 10 years.
Why are they so high?
These fees are the insurer's protection against you withdrawing your money before they can recoup all those hedging costs we talked about and, of course, make their profit.
And these charges, they follow a very steep but diminishing schedule, which just reinforces how locked in that money is at the beginning.
We should probably look at the source's example schedule to really emphasize the severity here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so if the charge is 7% in year 1, 6% in year 2, and so on, decreasing until it finally hits 0% in year 7, well, withdrawing $100,000 early could mean you forfeit $7,000 of your own principal right off the bat. It demands a long-term commitment.
A huge penalty. So beyond that immediate lockup penalty, we have to talk about the annual drag. If my returns are already capped at, say, 8%, what other costs are slicing away at that?
This is the most crucial part of the fine print. First, you have the annual costs of those optional features we mentioned.
The writers.
The riders, income riders, enhanced death benefit riders. While they're valuable for security, they often cost between 1 to 1.5% of your total account value annually.
So if your cap is 8% and the market only gets you 7%,
That 1.5% rider fee means your effective gain is immediately reduced to 5.5%.
wow, that dramatically erodes the benefit, especially when the cap is already pretty low to begin with.
It really does. And beyond those riders, some FIA contracts use something called a spread or a margin fee. This is a fee the insurer just takes right off the top before crediting you any interest.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If the market grows 10% and the spread is 1%, you only get credited on the remaining 9%, and that's still subject to the cap and participation rate.
It just adds another layer of complexity and drag that I imagine a lot of buyers might miss.
They do. You have to compare all of these levers, the cap, the participation, the rider fees, and any spread before you commit to anything.
As we're absorbing all this complexity, let's tackle the information overload problem by challenging two common misunderstandings. First, the myth that FIAs are just too risky because they're tied to the stock market.
That misconception it completely fails to acknowledge the floor.
Right.
They are designed specifically to balance risk and return. The cap and the participation rate, yes, they limit the potential upside, but the floor explicitly limits the downside to 0. In a severe bear market, an FIA is far, far less risky than direct market exposure. The risk is managed, it's not unlimited.
Okay. And the second misconception I hear all the time, they just don't provide enough growth. People look at that 8% cap, they compare it to the S&P 500 returning 15%, and they feel cheated. They conclude the return will always be negligible.
And that perspective is, well, it's a bit unfair because it's comparing a risk mitigation tool to a pure growth tool.
Apples and oranges.
Exactly. Yes, they may not grow as fast as a low-cost ETF in a strong bull market, but they are providing the premium for that downside insurance. The growth they do offer up to the cap, combined with the absolute assurance of the 0% floor, makes them an excellent choice for a very specific conservative growth profile.
So you have to decide what you're willing to pay for peace of mind.
That's what it comes down to.
Okay, so if you, the listener, decide this balance of protection and growth sounds right for you, what specific checklist should you run through when comparing the huge variety of options out there from different carriers?
You have to focus relentlessly on the mechanics that dictate your earnings. You must compare the cap rate and the participation rate and look at the calculation method. Is it an annual reset, a high watermark? Also, confirm the availability and, crucially, the specific annual cost of that income rider if guaranteed income is your #1 goal.
And since this is an insurance contract, the provider, the company itself, matters just as much as the product.
Oh, absolutely. You're betting on the company's long-term solvency. You have to look at the provider's reputation, their financial stability ratings from agencies like AM Best.
This is money that might sit untouched for decades.
And finally, meticulously review their specific fee structure, the precise surrender charges, and any of those administrative or spread fees to make sure the costs don't completely negate your capped potential returns.
So what does this all mean? Our deep dive reveals that the fixed indexed annuity is a sophisticated, a highly nuanced financial instrument, but it provides a really elegant solution to that security paradox of retirement. It represents a calculated trade-off.
It is a trade-off. You're giving up the chance for unlimited market gains, those massive exponential returns you see in the fixed years, in exchange for the certainty that your principal will never, ever fall victim to market losses.
You're paying a premium.
You're paying a premium through caps and fees for protection combined with a shot at moderate growth.
The central appeal of the FIA is the protection of principal. That's the floor balanced against the cap growth, the cap. For you, the learner, this raises a crucial, very personal question that dictates whether this product is right for your portfolio. What specific financial uncertainty? Is it market volatility, or is it the worry of running out of income? Are you most concerned about protecting yourself from as you approach retirement? Consider which limit, the cap on your potential gains or the guarantee of the floor's protection, ultimately dictates your comfort level when you're planning your long-term savings.
That's it for today's Meet Sean. If this helped, follow the show and share this episode with one person who needs it. See you next time.